Mike Freer.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. May I add my congratulations on your recent election, and thank you for giving me the opportunity for the maiden speech. It is a great honour to serve Finchley and Golders Green, and I have found the trust placed in me quite humbling when we walk around this building. But I'd like to thank the honourable members for Clwyd South for her rather interesting and quite emotional journey which has led her here, and also the honourable member for Birmingham Erdington for his passionate support of Birmingham and of the manufacturing industry which he seeks to recreate, and also the honourable member for Gloucester for his rather evocative description of the fair city of Gloucester. But first of all, Mr Deputy Speaker, I'd like to pay tribute to my predecessor. Dr Rudy Viz was not of my party, but I do regard him as a friend of over 20 years. And he served this House for 13 years before retiring a few weeks ago, but sadly died less than a week ago. And he will be a sad loss to public service. He was a diligent public service, both in this House but also on the London Borough of Barnet, where we both served together. And sadly, he leaves a wife and teenage children, but I know that they can be proud of his record of public service, both in this House but also in serving his communities of East Finchley as a local councillor, but the wider community of Finchley and Golders Green. But perhaps, Mr Deputy Speaker, I'd like to comment on another predecessor. Now, those of you who were in the chamber a couple of days ago will have heard my humble friend for North East Somerset proclaiming that he gave the country the first King of England. Well, I can't claim that Finchley and Golders Green gave the first King of England, but I perhaps can claim that we gave you the latter-day Boadicea in one Margaret Hilda Thatcher. In my view, Mr Deputy Speaker, my noble friend is the best peacetime Prime Minister we have had. In this current economic climate, we could learn much from her resolve in addressing the economic crisis she inherited, unemployment rising, inflation rising, and a public sector spending out of control. Perhaps, Mr Deputy Speaker, the task ahead for our government today is slightly greater, for she actually never managed to cut public spending, only to slow its growth, and yet we have laid out plans to actually cut public expenditure, which is something of a daunting task. But like her, I do believe we have to return to sound money and good housekeeping and protecting our cherished freedoms. Throughout her premiership, she remained an active and effective constituency MP, and I should be fortunate if I achieve a fraction of what she achieved. In particular, my campaigns for improved breast cancer screening for local women, for infrastructure investments on the North Circular, and for the free schools programme, which are so much deserved and wanted by my local population. But, Mr Deputy Speaker, Finchley and Golders Green is no longer the suburban seat of Margaret Thatcher. It is now metropolitan London. We have huge pockets of wealth to pockets of deprivation. We have the Hampstead Garden suburb, which is the largest conservation area in Europe, where houses can cost £80 million downwards. We then stretch within miles to pockets of deprivation on our estates that need regenerating, and we have Brent Cross Cricklewood, which is the largest regeneration scheme in the UK, which I hope my honourable friend, the Secretary of State for Community and Local Government, will very quickly give the green light to. We also have the finest schools in the country, and Barnet Council is a net importer of pupils from our neighbouring boroughs who clamour to send their children to our local schools. And if I could mention just one fine school, Christ College, which produced my noble friend, the Chief Rabbi, Lord Sachs, and of course our own Mr Speaker Bercow. Finchley and Golders Green is not known for manufacturing or farming. Neither does it have a fabulous cathedral, which I can wax lyrical on. But it does actually have the highest level of graduates in London. And we rely and contribute to the knowledge-based economy. And perhaps it was always thus. Those colleagues who still use a fountain pen might be pleased to know that in 1832, Dr. Henry Stevens invented the blue-black ink, and he was based in Finchley. He then went on, I'm pleased to say, to become the Conservative Member of Parliament for the neighbouring seat of Hornsey, now held by our coalition partners in Hornsey and Wood Green. We are also the home to the European headquarters of McDonald's, which I'm sure you've heard of. But we're also home to Pentland Brands, who you may not have heard of, but you will have heard of some of their brands of Berghaus, Ted Baker, Lacoste, Red or Dead, or Speedo, which are quite popular in the popular press this week. It is also the greenest and innovative company in the UK. It is quite remarkable how it takes brands and turns them into global brands rather than just a local manufacturing company. Finchley and Golders Green is now a vibrant metropolitan area, and it has one of the most diverse communities in the UK. I have the largest Jewish population of any constituency in the UK, some 25% of my electorate. But living harmoniously alongside the very large Jewish community is I have a large and growing Muslim and Hindu community. And yet, those communities have historically not always seen eye to eye, and yet our area enjoys beacon status for community cohesion. And it is that community cohesion that has led those communities to cherish those historic rights and freedoms. And many of our faith communities oppose ID cards for different reasons. The Jewish community because of their history and experience in Nazi Germany, and the Muslim community because of their experience post-7/7 and post-September 11th. And talking of ID cards, my honourable friend, the member for Hitchin and Harpenden, once commented that ID cards had been touted around from minister to minister until they could find one more gullible to accept it. They were a solution looking for a problem. They are meant to combat underage drinking, then identity theft, then fraud, then illegal immigration, and now terrorism. But, Mr. Speaker, they would do little to reduce those who work or employ illegally. Employers are already required to check documentation. Illegal employment is due to weak enforcement and poor compliance by both the agencies and the employer. Now, as a former banker, and I have to confess that my family are somewhat confused as to whether going from a banker to a full-time politician is a move up or down. I've seen firsthand how organised crime have produced counterfeit documents that not even the government could perhaps produce through its official agencies. And I've seen identity theft and fraud, which is based on that counterfeit document, which leads me to believe that any ID card will not counter fraud and will not counter identity theft, because organised crime will beat the system. And terrorism did not stop with ID cards in Madrid, and it would not have stopped the bombers on 7/7. In my view, we are right to abolish ID cards because it does shift the balance away from the citizen to the state and giving the government access to data which we simply do not know it is secure, neither do we know how it will be used. But, Mr. Deputy Speaker, 60 years ago, Finchley played a role in abolishing the last ID card system introduced during the Second World War. On the 7th of December 1950, one Clarence Wilcock was driving down Ballards Lane in Finchley, the very road where my constituency office is based. He was stopped by the police and asked to produce his identity papers. He refused. He was then prosecuted and convicted. He appealed. And the Lord Chief Justice, sitting on the appeal, said ID cards were intrusive and undermined the relationship between law enforcement and the people. He was right then, he is right today. And, Mr. Deputy Speaker, ID cards were scrapped. 60 years ago...
With the Honourable Man, I know it's unusual to interrupt. May I just... Order.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, 60 years ago, a resident of Finchley instigated the scrapping of ID cards. Today, I am pleased that this resident of Finchley will be doing his bit to scrap the latest version of ID cards. Thank you. Yeah.